Hello everyone. For my final project, I will be discussing Gestalt's principles and how many of these common design techniques are used in popular video games. The reason I chose this topic is because I am a game designer, and I find it interesting how these principles can be applied to a variety of different mediums, not simply just graphic design. I want to begin this discussion with a little history on the origins of Gestalt's principles and the important figures that led to its discovery. The man you see here is Max Wertheimer, an Austro-Hungarian psychologist who is known for his book, Productive Thinking and the Developing of the Phi Phenomenon. The next important contributor to the development of Gestalt's principles is a man by the name of Kurt Kofa, a German psychologist who studied human perception. In 1935, he wrote Principles of Gestalt's Psychology, which helped unite these principles and pass them on to students. The last important figure in the development of Gestalt's principles is a man by the name of Wolfgang Kohler. Similar to Kofa, he was a German psychologist as well as a phenomenologist. He was a close associate to Wertheimer and Kofa, and was ranked as the 50th most cited psychologist of the 20th century. Now let's move on to the 6 main principles in Gestalt's theory. The first is figure ground. The image you see here is a logo for the USA Network. We are able to read this logo because there is a clear relationship between the foreground, which holds the U and the A, and the background, which holds the S. Here is another example of figure ground. In this image we see a woman at first glance, but as we analyze the image more, we are able to see that the foreground shows a different image of a man who seems to be playing the saxophone. This technique is used in a lot of popular video games today. The image you see here is a screenshot from the 2D side-scrolling game called Limbo, where the player is put in the shoes of a little boy who has to overcome hardships of a cruel black and white world. This game uses figure ground very well with its silhouette design. The next principle I will be discussing is closure. This is when our brains are able to complete unfinished work by filling in the missing pieces. As you can see in this image, there is an illustration of a plane, or that is how our brain perceives it, when really it's a collection of shapes. The image you see here is a screenshot from one of Nintendo Switch games, Zelda Breath of the Wild. This scene depicts a battle between the forces of good and evil. The design of this scene is a great use of closure where the characters are not complete, but rather separate shapes that our brains are able to connect into full characters. The next principle is continuance. This design practice helps guide the user through the scene, connecting different elements and showing motion. In this logo for space, we see the star shooting through the text. The trail of the star begins with the S and continues past the E, which follows the direction in which we read. The image you see here is from the popular video game Skyrim. In many video games, there will be goals or objectives players must complete. It is common for video games to use the idea of continuance as a guiding method through their game. This image in particular shows a vast landscape, but there is clearly a path to be followed that extends out of the viewer's sight. The fourth principle is common fate. Similar to the pattern of the geese flying in their V-shaped flock, common fate uses a group of objects traveling in a similar direction to create what is called a directional line. This image is from the popular app Plants vs. Zombies, which stormed the world in 2009. The screenshot shown here is a great example of common fate. The designers have the enemy zombies grouped together and appearing to be traveling in the same direction. It is clear to the player that the zombies are moving to the left of the screen thanks to the directional line. The fifth design principle is similarity. This is one of the easier principles, which states that objects that share similar forms, colors, or size are typically seen as a group or pattern. This can be seen as the white dots are grouped together and the black dots are grouped together. A game that masters the practice of similarity is Portal. In this game, players must maneuver through different puzzles with a portal gun. The way that the designers made this game is by making the entrance portals a similar blue color and the exit portals a similar orange color. This helps direct the player and keep gameplay relatively straightforward. The last principle I will be discussing is proximity. This principle states that separate objects can be grouped together to create a common bond, or a whole image. In this image, we see a collection of different shaded dots, but when grouped together, they form a realistic eye. I thought a great example of proximity is the popular Nintendo game Mario Odyssey. In this scene, we see a collection of colorful buildings contrasted by a dirt-toned environment. The buildings, when grouped together, make a very unique and inviting town for the player to explore.